this center camera, but y'all can from here on out don't have to worry about the cameras. Y'all talk and whenever y'all are ready.
All right, we're excited about this episode. This is going to be so much fun. We're glad everybody's here around the table. And we're talking about technology, and we're talking about how to keep our kids safe with all the different technology. There's so much out there. Andrea, when you and I were first starting out as parents, like 20-something years ago,
21,
your kids,
as a matter of fact.
Right, your kids, my kids, it really wasn't a whole lot out there. But now it's just exploded. There's so much out there and so much that kids can fall a trap to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's one part of my parenting journey that I've definitely felt ill-equipped for. We were raising kids in the midst of this technology explosion, and I don't know that my husband and I ever felt like we really got in front of it. We were constantly trying to keep up with it.
I feel like that too.
This maybe the resources weren't there. Maybe there were times, and this is the scariest thing, when your kids know more than you do about something, and you're just trying to monitor and you're trying to help them literally navigate that, but you're not maybe equipped. I grew up, where I remember when my husband first told me about email, and I was terrified of it. I was like, seriously, it's seriously. He said, hey, we should start writing one another on email.
Because you guys were separated.
We were separated. We had a long-distance relationship, and we were using the postal service, to communicate. And he said, there's this new thing called email. And I was like, oh, no, you don't understand.
That's too fancy.
That's too much for me. And
it might start a fire.
What is it, in fact? I don't even understand. How does it get from one place to the other? And so that was my frame of reference for technology, which was, I'm a relational person. I'm a person who, I want to see you, I want to talk to you, I want to pick up the phone and call you. And so it was just a struggle for us, 21 years ago to figure this out.
So Clay, what about you? I'm assuming you have kids, right?
Yes, my wife and I have two daughters, 1 7 and 1 4.
Oh wow! So you've got little ones. Okay, so when you're starting to think about and you see all the different things going on technology-wise, and you see it just being bombarded, those kids are involved with. Because I know at our church, I'll have 2 and 3 year olds. I'll be in the nursery with my wife. 2 and 3 year olds will come up and ask me for my phone to start playing games on.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So I'm sure you deal with that with your own kids. How do you keep them safe?
Yeah, so that's definitely something to see that with our girls that we're trying to figure out and navigate. And I'm someone who's been in student ministry for almost 20 years, so I've seen the progression of it with students, and now it's a whole different ballgame that's in my home.
Right,
and,
right.
So Stacy and I are even struggling now just to figure out what's too much, how do we pull back, even with our 7-year-old,
because it's
making
kind of
good decisions.
It's kind of a moving target.
Absolutely.
Because especially when you think, okay, I've got a handle on this one, here comes 10 more new kind of social platforms.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe from your experience with student ministry, how have you seen the difference in the kids and what they're dealing with? How has that changed in 20 years?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. When I was in high school, talking to Andrea, growing up, if you missed out on a party, an event, something like that, you might not know it for 2, 3, 4 days later. Now, our students, if they miss out on something, which they want to be a part of everything, they know it immediately. Yeah. And so some of the stress, some of the pressure, even depression that comes from that.
Well, I even talked about that with my kids. If we missed our favorite TV show, we missed it. Yeah. It was gone.
Right.
Now, with technology, you can watch it streaming, you can DVR it, you can do the whole thing.
I don't feel like watching it tonight.
Right.
I'll watch
That's
it tomorrow
exactly
night.
Right. That was totally not the way we grew up.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
So now it's totally changed.
Yeah, and in an age where relational capital for students is huge, seeing what they're missing out on and how to connect and how many connections I can make and those kinds of things, it's their world. It's literally their world.
Do you feel like, too, a lot of their self-worth is wrapped up in followers and likes and all of that?
Absolutely.
It kind of defines who they are.
Yes. And we have conversation with parent after parent after parent, at least at our church and probably all the churches that you represent too, of that same issue. How do we deal with this? How do we point our kids to finding their identity in Christ and Christ alone? And so it's an issue, which is why we're having this conference.
That's something that translates, beyond youth. I think women struggle with that.
Yeah.
Maybe everybody struggles with that. We can so easily get trapped. I think social media technology, it can be used for good, and I love to see it used for good, for God's glory, for the encouragement of others. Simply just to document life. That's why I use Facebook, because I love the memories that pop up. 10 years later,
Right.
I'm like, oh, I forgot about that hairstyle, or oh, I never thought I would forget that, but I did. But the trap of gaining our worth or our value, or even our relationships, in that mode, we have to be careful about that.
Well, I'll give you a perfect example. My daughter she just turned 16, and she is, in my opinion, well-adjusted. She knows she doesn't find her value in that, but yet she still gets disappointed when her picture doesn't get enough likes. She's like, it kind of does play with her because that's their whole world. Now, for us as adults, we sit back and we think, come on, people are not going to like you, thinking you're going to get upset about that, or you're going to feel depressed over it. But that's really what happens, right?
Sure, absolutely, and that's the reality again. Yeah.
Well, I feel like if it can be kind of translated into how people felt like 30 years ago, it would be like hosting a birthday party and only one person showed up. It would have that same feeling, but kids are feeling that almost every single day when they post something and it doesn't get whatever their standard number is,
Right.
their number that they would be satisfied with. It's kind of the same feeling of like rejection and feeling left out. And then, well, does anyone like me? Does anyone think I'm fun or cool or fill in the blank?
So Bethany, you're kind of our resident young person.
Yeah, representing the millennials.
I've said so many times, Bethany keeps me young, and I love that, and I'm so thankful. I love your perspective on things. Talk to us a little bit about what social media was like, in the development of your story, your walk with God, your relationships.
Well, I didn't get a phone until I was probably like 15 maybe, which was late for my friend group. And so that was hard at first, just because, you're the one person that like has to borrow a phone to text my mom, like, I'm ready to be picked up, that kind of thing. But I'm glad that my parents waited a while to give me a phone. I just think that was wise on their part. And also when I did get a phone, it was like a flip phone. It wasn't the smartphone. And so I didn't have access to social media until I was probably 16 or 17. I remember when Instagram launched, all of my friends saying, you need to get an Instagram. Like, it's so cool. It's super fun. And I wasn't on board with it at first, and then I got it and kind of was like, oh, this is cool, But I don't know. I feel like kind of in a weird spot, and I don't know if other people my age can relate to this, but I don't feel like I completely relate to people 5 or 10 years older than me that didn't grow up with any kind of technology, right in their hand or in their pocket all the time. But then I'm also not with all the Gen Z kids that like can't imagine life without it. I'm kind of in this weird spot in the middle. But I definitely understand where it goes with feeling like validation and, okay, how many followers do I have? Like, I think I've definitely felt that, especially in high school. But it occurs to me sometimes where I'll be on Instagram or whatever, and I'll think, I don't know these people. Like, I follow them or they follow me, but I don't know them. I don't keep up with them. And so I've had those moments of like, how much does this actually add to my life? Is this even healthy? Like, I have those kind of existential crisis moments of like, am I doing this right? Is this even good? And I think when social media is in its proper place, it's fine. It's a good way to stay connected with people. But when it's on a mass scale and when you're posting everything about your life and really like your identity is wrapped up in that, is when I think it just becomes an issue. And thankfully, I don't have enough followers, so that becomes a problem. But but I think that it can very easily go that way, where like just you become narcissistic and think that everyone needs to know what you're doing all the time, and that's just not the case. And finding your worth in that rather than Christ.
Well, I'll get you guys' opinion on this. To me, I think one of the things about social media in particular, but in technology overall, is people want to be famous. People want people to know about them. I mean, they see their pop stars, they see everybody else on television and in movies, but now the whole world can know our opinion in just a couple of clicks, right? Sure. So, I mean, that plays into it a bunch too, right?
Absolutely, yeah, and I think students that's the thing, they want to be known, whether it's by their friends or even at school amongst people that they don't even want to be friends with. They want to be known by. And
right.
Social media provides that avenue for that to happen.
Okay, so let's get into some of the dangers. We've talked about how it really can affect kids' self-esteem, and that's obviously a danger. But what are some of the other things that maybe as parents and grandparents that are listening and watching, how do we navigate and how do we find out, okay, this is causing more than just self-esteem issues?
Yeah, I think, Steve, one of the interesting breakouts that we'll talk about in this conference is just the science of screens and what it's doing to brain function and what it's doing to the ability to have face-to-face communication and face-to-face conversations, which if you spend any time with children and specifically students, you find very quickly is a difficult
Their heads
thing
are always
to have.
down. Their thumbs are always working, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And so I think that's one of the dangers that we'll talk about. Obviously, things like pornography and those things are issues that lurk that, I think we all would agree that Satan is using to just do an incredible amount of damage to the next generation. And not just to the next generation, but to adults as well. So it's not just a next generation issue, a kid issue or student issue, but it's an adult issue as well.
I feel like even though I'm not, terribly removed from the kids that you're talking about, but I do feel like looking back at kids that are, 5 or 10 years younger than me, it seems like they've all grown up faster than I did. And maybe I'm having this
You're just getting old.
Yeah, maybe it is. It's old person perspective. I don't know if that's what I have, but I do feel like kids that are, 16, 17, 18 are so much more aware of things than I was. And it seems like girls particularly aren't going through like an awkward stage in middle school and high school. It's like they jump from being little kids to almost full-fledged adults in just what they're aware of and how they're dressing and how they're acting. Is that due to social media, do you think? Or Andrea, I don't know if you can even weigh in on this. Like, how do you think?
Yeah, I do think that it has accelerated stages of life.
Yes.
And like just being a kid, and when I say just being a kid, I'm saying just enjoying being a kid. I don't know that there's a space for that to be celebrated necessarily. And I definitely experienced that with my oldest son. He always wanted to be at the next stage. And social media played into that, whether it was he was, 10 or 11 years old and wanted a Facebook account, or once he had the Facebook account, if he wanted the next app or whatever, or if he wanted this kind of phone or that kind of phone. And I'm like, go outside and play, go outside and throw the baseball and ride your bike.
Use your imagination.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I do think that there is an element of that, and somewhere that I think we should go with the conversation is, as parents, as teachers, as, investors in the next generation, we kind of have two choices. One, we can learn about this, learn how to help navigate this, or we can just say, well, it is what it is. And I've seen both responses among my friends, among, leaders, among whomever, even sometimes within myself, if I can be so transparent to say that. Sometimes you can just say, it's such a big, huge thing.
You kind of want to bury your head in the sand a little bit.
You just almost want to ignore it. And I think that's the beauty of this conversation, to say, you know what, we don't have to ignore it. We can be equipped. There are things that we can do, but we have to make that choice.
But it feels overwhelming as a parent sitting back and saying, I can barely keep up with my life as it is, to try to figure out all the different social platforms. Because like we said earlier, there's a new one every day, it seems like. And my kids aren't telling me about it. They're going ahead and signing up and logging on. I have no idea about it. How do we bridge that gap?
Yeah. That's part of this conference. When we sat down as a Next Gen team at our church and with Warren Gassaway from the state convention and others and just talked about what's the purpose of this, we came up with 3 words. We wanted to equip parents. We wanted to help them have a better understanding of what's out there, what's available, that kind of thing. We wanted to empower parents because, Andrew, like you talked about, we had parents that they were throwing their hands up in there saying, we can, there's no way we can
I think that's the biggest thing. Yeah.
So we want to empower them and we want to encourage them, because we are going to have parents that walk into this weekend and that we do life with that just feel totally defeated, and they just need to be encouraged not to give up, to keep going, that this fight, to raise godly young men and young women, it's worth it, and we have to keep investing. So.
That's so good. And, I know that this is going to help not only parents, but also teachers and people who maybe work within a church setting, but also just people who will say, I want to fight for the next generation. I want to have the information so that as I'm living life, I can pass that on. And so I think that this is relevant for everybody.
Absolutely. We've already gotten quite a few registrations in, and one of them is a couple that is in their late 70s, and they're
Really?
Wow.
grandparents, and they're coming because they want to help their kids parent their grandkids.
Awesome.
And so it really is for moms, dads, step parents, grandparents, but also coaches, teachers who just have a heart to invest into the next generation.
So can you break down a little bit what people can expect from the conference? What kind of topics are going to be covered? Because technology is a broad word, so
Yes.
dive in a little bit in the details of what they'll be talking about.
Absolutely. We're excited because the day will revolve around 2 general sessions with Jonathan McKee, who is from California, has written over 20 books about media, technology, parenting, that kind of thing. So we're excited about having him. But then the day is going to revolve also around 2 sets of breakout sessions where we're going to talk about things like how to fill in the gaps. That's going to be just for grandparents who want to have a little bit more knowledge and how to navigate this world. We're going to talk about those guardrails, how to set up some boundaries with your kids. Some who may need to have teenagers that may need to kind of reroute some boundaries, and some just to set boundaries for the very first time. We're going to talk about apps that you need to be aware of that are up and coming. And the funny thing about that conversation is it may be obsolete in 6 months.
Right.
Because
No, right.
things are
It's true.
changing so
Yeah.
fast. How to have face-to-face conversations with your kids, how to talk to them if they failed and maybe fail morally and looked at pornography or those kinds of things. So it's a wide range, even for parents trying to set the norm for what's going to take place in their home, and stick to, hey, this is who we're going to be, and just because our home doesn't look like your friend's home, this is who we're going to be, and we're going to be confident in that.
Oh, that's tremendous. We are so appreciative and so thankful that guys like you and these teams that are coming in that are going to be letting us know about that. Can we kind of zero in on a couple of things that's going to be in these breakout sessions? Like some of these apps. Do you have any off the top of your head that are like, hey, this one's something that a parent needs to pay attention to?
Yeah, obviously, all the social media apps that many of us are aware of. With Facebook is more of an older generation.
Well, that's
that we
our age.
Understand.
Our age took it over.
Right,
I mean,
right.
Seriously, the people Bethany's age saw that it was just a bunch of older people on Facebook, so they went to Instagram, and that's who populates Instagram.
Yeah. So Instagram is a biggie. Obviously, things like TikTok, Snapchat.
Yeah.
We'll be talking about those, and those are the big ones right now. But like I said, gosh, by August there may be a brand new one that's on the scene, and we'll talk about it if there is. Yeah.
I wonder too, even though this conference is geared towards grandparents or parents, I do wonder if it might give adults the chance to kind of think about their own screen time. Like, what are they investing in? How much time are they spending on their phone? I don't know if you guys get the notification that's like your screen time is up by whatever, or down by however many percent.
That's
That's
the most
like
convicting moment in my week.
Oh
right
my
there.
word. Every Sunday morning, like right before I go to
Yes.
church, I'm like, oh, this is bad. But it's so true. I think everybody gets that kind of heart check of like, I don't even realize how often I'm on my phone or how attached I feel to it at times. So maybe this might be a heart check for parents.
Well, let me before you answer that, let me jump in with a real life example of this. Okay, so our house is streaming. We don't have cable or satellite. We have just all streaming. And there'll be times when my 7-year-old will come up and say, "Hey, Daddy, can we go do X? Can you help me with this?" And me and my wife both are sitting in our chairs and we're on our phones.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're not paying as much attention as we need to because we are distracted.
Right,
Yes,
right.
absolutely. And I think we all could be honest that that's
Yeah.
taking place in our homes. So, one of the breakout sessions is led by a good friend of mine, and it's called Lead by Example, and talking about that specific thing of just setting parents modeling healthy choices and habits when it comes to online activity. And so, yeah, that's going to be something that we'll talk about at the conference for sure.
That sounds great. Well, tell us some details:
Yeah.
dates, times, location, registration. You know, what do
How
you
do we
have
get
for
there?
us?
How do we
How do we
get
get there?
Yeah, come on. August the 7th, Saturday, August the 7th. It's one day. We're asking parents, grandparents, coaches, teachers to give 6 hours on a Saturday morning, afternoon to come together at First Baptist Church, Benton, downtown Benton, and just to invade our campus. And we'll meet there in the worship center and have some general session times together with Jonathan and Joel Winters and the Refuge Band from Washita Baptist University. Super excited about having them.
Oh, nice.
And so everything will take place there on our campus on Saturday, August the 7th. We'll start registration at 9 o'clock, and then 9:30 we'll dive in. The day includes, it will end at 3 o'clock. It's $40 for a couple to join, $25 for an individual.
Wow, that's good.
FBCbenton.org/navigate. That's where you want to go to register.
It's at a Southern Baptist church in Arkansas. Going to have food.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Right.
part
Well,
of your
I'm
registration.
I'm
We're gonna
just
take
telling
care of
you
So-
feed them, they will come.
That's right.
We all know that.
That's
We're
right.
in
And we're good Southern Baptist. So
Church.
yeah,
That's
we'll
exactly
There you
right.
go.
We'll throw some
Attaboy.
snacks in as well.
There
So,
you go.
Nice.
There you go.
But we're looking forward to it.
We'll link to that in our show notes on this episode so you can click and get more information and register as well. And then it's going to be fun. August 7th is going to be a kind of could be a life-changing day for a lot of
That's what we're praying for.
a
Yeah.
lot of families.
And like you mentioned, it's 6 hours. I think you could spend 6 hours doing a lot of other things, but I think very few will have such an impact and really make you aware of the truths that might be going on in your home. And so I think this is a worthwhile investment for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sounds so exciting. Well, it's always fun to have you, Steve and Bethany, on my podcast. It's always great to be on your podcast. We love to do joint efforts and adventures together. You guys are great. Clay, thank you for joining
Yeah.
us.
Yes,
absolutely.
It's so
thank you.
fun.
Thank you.
And I know this is going to help so many people, and so we can't wait to see how God uses it.
Yeah.
So
And one other quick little thing we'll also link to is one of Jonathan's books on our social media page. I mean, on our
Show
show
notes.
notes as well, so that folks can get a little more in depth if they want to get a copy of one of his books.
Absolutely,
So,
and we're excited too. August the 3rd, just a few days before the conference, his new book, which is entitled Parenting Generation Screen, Guiding Your Kids to Be Wise in a Digital World. It's being released on August the 3rd.
Oh,
and so he's
awesome.
going to be speaking a lot just about that parenting generation screen.
Sounds great, man.
Great.
Again, thanks everybody for being here. This was a fun little half hour, but educational as well. And we hope everybody comes out August 7th, First Baptist Church in Benton.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to it.
How about that?
Clear?
All right.
Nice.
I thought that was pretty painless.
Yeah.
Good.